case, what we're going to be looking at is meaning relations. What essentially definitions of how different words can relate to each other. The first one is antonymy. Now that's the antonym, opposite in meaning. And we have to note that antonyms actually share an awful lot of information, a lot of meaning. They have to belong to the same semantic field, for instance, and there has to be some kind of logical reason for them to be opposites or to be antonyms, in fact. So, for instance, we could have man and woman. They're both animate, they're both human, they're both adults, but one is female and one is male. So, for instance, you can't have as opposites, how would you really say, for instance, apple and chair? They share absolutely nothing in common, so they can't be opposites of each other. They're in different semantic fields. So antonymy actually implies that there's an awful lot of overlap and that there's a difference in one or two crucial features. In this case here, for instance, we've got man and woman. It's the presence of the female or the presence of the male chromosomes. Okay, there's also something called gradable antonymy. So here we've got points on a scale, and the way you can look at it is that it's points on a scale that you can use the comparative form. So you've got hot, warm, tepid, cool, and cold. So hot and cold are opposites, okay, but you also have these grading. You could say hotter and colder. So there's a certain there's a comparative that you can make there. So those are gradable antonyms because you could say more or less. It's more hot, it's less hot, it's more cold, it's less cold. There's also binary antonymy. Now, binary antonymy is also called complementary, and basically it's one or the other and not both. So you're present or you're absent. So she is present implies that she is not absent. You could say, for instance, this lecture is more boring than the last one, but you can't say that Andy is more absent than Bobby. Yes, I know, you can use it in a metaphorical sense, but we're talking about serious literal senses here. Okay, so for instance, alive and dead. You're either dead or you're alive. Okay. If we continue these relationals, so again, this is sort of kind of like the relative antonyms, but these are converses. So related to the same situation, but from opposite perspectives. So for instance, if the screen is above the blackboard is necessarily below the screen. So one is related to the other. Okay, Jack is Junior's father, therefore Junior has to be Jack's son. So father and son, they're related to each other. If you're a father, you necessarily have a son. If you're a son, you necessarily have a father. Okay? If you sold a car, someone necessarily bought it. You can't sell it without having a buyer. Synonyms are words that have similar meanings or same meanings. There's very, very few true synonyms where there's complete overlap, simply because that's a waste of space in our brains. Why would we need 2, 3, or 4 words that mean exactly the same thing? Rather, there's always going to be slight differences, slight shades of meaning. So, for instance, if we're looking at big and large, yeah, big and large, yeah, first of all, you think, well, they're exactly the same. But then think about what you say. If you say big dog and a large dog, okay, this is the big dog park, this is the large dog park. Okay, it works. But you say my big sister, you don't say my large sister. She'll get really annoyed if you did. So my big sister means my older sister, but it doesn't mean my large sister. Same thing with change and alter. Okay, you can change your plans and you can alter your plans, and there it means the same thing. If you change your pants, it's not the same thing as altering your pants. If you change your pants, it means you take off the one pair that you have, you're putting on another. But if you alter your pants, you're making them narrower, you're making them wider, you're hemming them, you're doing something else to them. Okay, continuing with synonyms, as I said, there's no such thing as perfect synonyms because languages are efficient. If there's a complete overlap, it's like, well, why? I mean, why do you need so many things? So they might be a sharing of sense, but a difference in collocation. So, for instance, the words that can be found with each other or connotation, they might be a slight difference in meaning. One is more formal, one is less formal. One is nicer, maybe more polite. One is a little bit ruder, that kind of thing. Register also, which has to do with the politeness. There's also hyponymy. So in hyponymy, they're related through inclusion. So we've got a goofy thing here. I'm not really quite sure why this tree is not looking the way it's supposed to. But if we look at it, we've got a tree, okay, which is the category, and then the exemplars are, for instance, palm trees, although technically a palm is not a tree, it's a grass, but we'll leave that alone. There's mesquite, there's oak, and willow. So all of them can be defined as a kind of tree that has. So a mesquite tree is a kind of tree that grows in the desert. The oak is a kind of tree that has broad leaves. The willow is a kind of tree that looks like it's weeping all the time. Okay? And they go all the way through. The relationship goes all the way through. So food, for instance, can be meat, fruit, or a vegetable. And let's say a vegetable can, or sorry, fruit here. I don't know why this is sitting on the vegetable, but so fruit can be an apple, a pear, or an orange. And then if you look at the apples, they can be Fuji's, Macintosh, Red, Delicious. There's all kinds of things. But a Fuji is an apple, which is a fruit, which is a food. So the line goes all the way up. Okay? A Macintosh is an apple, which is a fruit, which is a food. So that's called a transitive relationship because it goes all the way down. The same relationship of exclusion exists at all levels. So food is a meaning component. In other words, it's part of the definition of Fuji, which is an apple, which is a fruit, which is a food. Okay? There's also things in here. We've got another goofy tree. Meronymy, which is the part-whole relationship. So a car, for instance, is made up of wheels and engine and windows and doors and tires, and the engine is made up of a piston and cylinder and shaft and all kinds of other bits and pieces that go into the car. Okay? And when you refer, for instance, sometimes in Meronymy, you might say that, well, yeah, you want to see my new wheels? I don't know, do people still say that to mean a car? But if you refer to, oh yeah, he got new wheels, you don't mean you actually bought the tires. Well, maybe you do mean that you bought the tires, but generally you mean that you bought the new car, that you have the whole car. Okay, and these have limited transitivity. So for instance, the knuckle is part of your finger. So you could say, I heard a knuckle on my finger. And the finger is part of your hand. And your hand is part of your arm. Okay, so it just keeps getting bigger. But you can say I injured the knuckle on my finger, and you could say I injured a knuckle on my hand, but even that sounds a little bit odd, doesn't it? I mean, if you say I injured my knuckle on my finger, you would indicate which finger. But I injured a knuckle on my hand. I injured a knuckle on my arm. No one says that, okay? Because it's the transitivity is limited. It doesn't go all the way. There's other words like polysemy and homonymy. Okay, so other meaning relations have to do with the semantic relationship. So polysemy and homonymy describe the relationship between the different meanings of a single form. And again, we're not talking about spelling necessarily. We're talking about the pronunciation. Okay, so let's look at bat, for instance. You've got a bat, which could be the stick that you use to play baseball with. You can bat at things, which is to hit at things with a stick usually. Or it could be a critter that, you know, one of those, a rodent that flies around at night and eats bugs. And sometimes lands on your neck and sucks your blood. Well, no, that's a vampire. Okay, so polysemy and homonymy, let's keep going with this. Polysemy, there's distinct but related senses. So if you've got a bat, okay, a stout wooden stick or a club, a blow as with a stick, okay, or a rounded, usually wooden club used in baseball, used in cricket. So you can see that there's a clear relationship. There's definitely overlap in the sense there. Homonymy, the words are pronounced exactly the same, and they're spelt the same, and they look the same, and everything else is the same, but there's absolutely no overlap in the meaning. So a bat is a stout wooden club, but a bat is a nocturnal flying mammal. And there's nothing you can bat at the bat, okay, to try to get it out of your hair. And we also have meaning relations between sentences. So meaning is demonstrated in the way speakers relate words to each other, but there's also sentences. Word relations can be manifested at the sentence level, and sometimes it's the syntactic construction that shows the meaning relations. So paraphrase, okay, because of synonymous terms. My uncle is a bachelor, okay, so a bachelor can also mean, for instance, although people rarely use it that way, but it can also mean someone who holds a BA or a BS degree. But if you want to make it clear, you say my uncle has never been married. And sometimes there's linguistic syntactic equivalence. Linguistic students hate the semantics unit. The semantics unit is hated by linguistic students. Okay, they essentially mean the same thing. You use one or the other for stylistic or whatever reasons. Entailment means that sentence A entails sentence B if the truth of A assures the truth of B, the falsity of B assures the falsity of A. Okay, what does that mean? So it means that if A is true, then B is also true. And if B is false, then A is also false. If I say Alice boiled an egg, that means that the egg is cooked. Okay, so if it's true that she boiled an egg, it's also true that she cooked an egg. Okay, if it's false that she cooked an egg, then it is also false that she boiled the egg. She cannot have boiled the egg if the egg is not cooked. Conversely, if you say Alice cooked an egg, it does not necessarily mean that she boiled the egg, because there's other ways of cooking an egg. And sentence A contradicts, this is contradiction, sentence A contradicts sentence B if they are opposite in meaning. So my brother just arrived from Boston, but he's never been in Boston. So how is that possible? I mean, let's face it, even if you're doing a layover in the airport, you're still in Boston. Okay, so my brother just arrived from Boston. You can't say my brother has never been in Boston. You could say he's never visited Boston, he's never lived in Boston, but you can't say he's never been in Boston. So that's contradiction. Okay, and we thank Dr. Daniel Devlin for having created these